Welcome, Nyrika. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And today we're going to talk on a subject that is indeed a very unique one, something that is about the future. It is the future of India. It is the future of, what potentially India can be. A mission that has been led by CII for now a long time, actually, ever since India touched India at 60 in 2007. It's an industry-led initiative that has brought multiple stakeholders together to be able to have a discussion on something that is so critical and so important. Collaboration and the ability to leverage what India has already built, but more importantly, imagine a future and then fold that in to be able to create the right environment for today to be able to build upon that. So I think it's a very interesting exercise that industry has led with multiple stakeholders, and really a joy, Nyrika, to have you here with us today to be able to get your view and your insights on how will India really make this big leap, right? We talk of a Viksit Bharat, we talk of a developed India, and we also talk of a dream, because this is truly a dream for all of us to be able to see in India, with someone like you leading the Godrej Group and being somebody who's going to be at the forefront, even at India at 100. How are you seeing the India of today, and really what is it that India that you would like to wake up to in 1947 when you do get there? I think we have lost Nyrika, but she should be back shortly. Aparna, can you just check?
She's reconnecting. Yeah, give us a moment.
So I'll continue, but just to really talk about the vision exercise that was carried out. I think Nyrika's back.
Sorry. I think my network went off a bit.
No problem.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. No, so I was just mentioning that when you wake up on 15th August 2047, and you look around, really, what's the India you see? Maybe let's start with that, and then we go into some of the areas of passion that is with you. How do we really grow responsibly as a country, and how do we lead sustainably?
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I think it's a very relevant and important topic because I think we're really at an inflection point in India. I think there are so many opportunities which had never been there in the past, I think, as a result of COVID and rejigging of supply chains, also in terms of foreign OEMs looking for strategic long-term partnerships that are stable. I think, and all of our intellectual capital in the country really positions us for some remarkable growth. But then growth in and of itself doesn't really have any value if it's not inclusive and we're not able to bring everybody along. And I think that the whole drive from now to 2047 will really be, how do we grow inclusively, and how do we bring people up along with and reduce the inequality divide today, which is so apparent. And in a country that really is made up, even if we're looking at the manufacturing and engineering infrastructure in the country, it's made up of the MSME backbone. And if we're not able to really bring up that whole supply chain, then I think as companies and as a country, we really cannot fulfill our objectives, because finally, whether it's quality, whether it's sustainability, which is increasingly becoming not only an imperative, but a requirement from customers, and to ensure that the supply chain is also equally robust and resilient, requires a lot of work. And at Godrej, we have, for the last 20 years, with the help of CII, really focused on the cluster program and focused on not only from a green perspective, but also from a digitization perspective. How do we bring up the quality of our supply chain, and also companies that are at very different levels of maturity, is not an easy task. And I think especially on the Scope 3 emissions front, one of the probably most difficult nuts to crack, in the sense that it's not a one-time fix. It requires consistent and also consistent help as well as access. And I think today, investments in manufacturing facilities, if we could think of shared facilities, if we could think of shared R&D centers where, a lot of MSMEs could come together and work together rather than having to invest individually, then we could really bring up the quality of our supply chain, and as a result, the quality that we can export to the world. And I think that is really the imperative today, and it's both a challenge and an opportunity. I would see it more as an opportunity, because there is so much to really be gained from that, and also something that can't be done individually. So I think whether it's companies coming together, whether it's public-private partnerships, like the one suggested by Niti Aayog in terms of the Tech Frontier Hub, and other ways in which to really be able to get the scale of China, in terms of not only being sort of the low-cost alternative, but to be the high complexity and a high value addition partner in the world today. That is really an opportunity for us as a nation. And I think it's something that has to be done really in collaboration and cannot be done alone.
No, I think you raised so many good points in the India you're going to imagine and wake up to in 2047. But I want to go a little deeper on this piece that you really talked of, both R&D and technology and digital, right? I think today in India also the public spend on R&D is probably the largest part of our R&D expenditure, and private sector is still what you said, catching up to what needs to be done, whether it is like China or others. But combined with that, the role of technology. So today we are still I think we are clearly the world's third most digitized country, right? We've got so many things that have worked well with our digital public infrastructure and things like that. So on one side, we are being able to see some progress on the way consumers and enterprises are willing to adopt and adapt to, at least digital, which is, kind of penetrated. And you look at the digital initiatives also at, the Godrej Enterprise Group. How do you see this role? Particularly, you talked of an inclusive India, right? So on the socio-economic side, we've seen things like UPI and all of that working on the consumer side. But again, in the intermediaries, in the SMEs, what are those few technology wins that we can have early on today, which we can then build upon, right? Is there something that comes to your mind basis the things you've been looking at?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, today technology and the challenge of, let's say, building it organically is today where we rely a lot on acquisitions for technology. Let's say, even if we're looking at the aerospace and defense sectors, where today I think we can benefit from the opening up of R&D. Earlier, it was very contained, and we were not able to leverage the expertise of startups, companies that specialize in particular types of technologies. And even today, the engine program, which is something we are looking at very in a focused way, that India today has still not built its indigenous engine. And today, whether that is, on the for military and defense, or whether even for civilian purposes, being able to provide an alternative to foreign OEMs, and to be able to develop that indigenously and not be reliant on other countries for technology, which, depending on geopolitical winds, can be either favorable or unfavorable. And so I think there is a real opportunity for us to be doing much more in collaboration with startups, in collaboration with government, as well as private industry, to really bring up aerospace and defense technology today. I also feel in the consumer space, in terms of building out solutions that we can use technology also from a efficiency perspective, not only looking at, let's say, for instance, on the back end, connecting the shop floor for more efficiency, for maintenance, for energy consumption, water utilization, but also on the front end, how to really build systems that can be more objective about consumer needs, to be able to then play back into the manufacturing process. And today we really have the intellectual capital in India. And today, with the advent of AI, the technology landscape has also changed significantly. And I think that looking at how we can enable our workforce to be productive and to be marketable, in the sense, not that we want our workforce to be marketable, but we want them to be at par with industry players. And to do that, we really need skilling. And I think both from a learning and an unlearning process, I think there's a lot that we need to do today, and a lot more that can be done from collaboration. So I really see technology, and as you alluded to, the whole digital infrastructure of the country, UPI payments, the quick adoption of technology, and also the democratization of it to enable access. And I think the idea should be, how can technology really benefit the country as a whole, not just a section of elite businesses, but how can we really use technology as a tool for inclusion, for clearer transparency with data? How can we use technology in the production process for quality? I think there are huge ways in which technology can be enabled for inclusivity. And I think that really should be our aim for 2047.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, in the current environment, I think AI is actually entered pretty much every aspect of, operations, whether it's in manufacturing, it's in agriculture, consumer, the creative industries, you name it, right? I mean, AI has now, and I think while India has, maybe lost the battle on the hardware the initial days to US and China and the standards, etc. But on the application layer, I think, India probably still has the biggest opportunity. And, next month we're going to have a large AI Impact Summit and really looking at AI from an impact angle, right? I think, corporate India, government, states, etc., all are, coming together to be able to bring the world to convene in India to see what AI can do for India and how that can create greater impact. So I think like that, picking one technology or one big emerging, area, AI is big. But you're also very strong, Nyrika, particularly even as a company, which has done a lot on sustainability, and I think, it starts from the leadership, right, to very large extent, especially when you look at corporate India. If there is no championing from the leadership, it's hard to see it percolate across organizations. And you refer to the challenges that MSMEs are anyway facing in a competitive environment today. Many times that gets missed. But what is that? That big leadership shift that needs to happen, right? How do we might just play catch up, but if we want to lead the world, on what it means to be truly sustainable, what is it we should be doing? Did you get that? I think your screen froze. I said, if you want to lead the world.
Yes. Sorry, I did.
You froze. I said, if
Yeah.
you want to really lead the world, from achieving the long term, from achieving the sustainable goals and actually making India truly sustainable across industry, what's that big leadership shift, right? Because as I said, you've been doing that and your group has been, doing some things. Can you share some best practices, some tips, something that industry at large should adopt, and even other stakeholders, to make that happen?
Yeah, sure. I think, our group, as you rightly said, has always been obsessed with the idea of sustainability and how it can really be mainstreamed, and, started with my grandfather and my granduncle, and today my uncle Jamshid, one of, the biggest champions of. And I think that am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. No, so I think that really, the idea of looking at it not as, let's say, the 2% or the afterthought or an ancillary kind of compliance related objective, but really looking at it in the 98% of business operations, and whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's carbon intensity. Today, we have made significant progress in our goals for 2032 to reduce energy efficiency by half, and also to increase carbon intensity, to decrease carbon intensity by 60% by 2032. So I think we have, and it's broken down for each of the businesses, but the target is at the corporate level. And today, we also have an overarching umbrella called the Good and Green initiative, under which we really look at green products, and we've set ourselves a target to have 50% of revenues come from green products by 2032. So a big focus on how do we ensure that our products are sourced in the right way, whether it's furniture. How do we ensure from an appliance perspective that we're always going beyond the energy standards, because today energy efficiency, and especially with the, if we look at, let's say, AC adoption today, which is in single digits, and with rising temperatures, and also with the GST reduction today, it's not really looked on as a luxury or a discretionary item. It's looked on more as a productive tool. And that whole shift in how we're thinking even about appliances is crucial because the adoption is just going to increase. But if we are not looking at energy efficiency in the products that we're using, and again, this can't be a single industry focus because the price points are just unaffordable. So how do we work with government to really ensure that these kind of let's say conscious choices are really being shaped by affordability, because today we are a very price sensitive market and products need to be affordable. And if we need people to make the right choices, we have to work on, bringing costs down, both from a company perspective as well as seeing how products can be made more affordable. So I think the whole focus on consumer durables and energy efficiency, also on green building, and how do we have more green buildings? Today, if we say that 70% of our buildings are yet to be built, then ensuring that the buildings that we are building are not guzzling energy, are also, having circularity, and also the materials that we use and the building techniques are also important considerations for us as we look around in all our cities, the sort of rampant development, and how do we really build more sustainably. So I think that is also something which is a key priority for us. And then in terms of renewable energy and clean energy, so whether it's nuclear and trying to make that technology more accessible, looking at new technologies like SMRs, and also in terms of solar, how do we really we are more in the EPC side, but how do we really make that accessible? And again, it comes down to pricing, it comes down to grid efficiency, it comes down to a lot of let's say leakages, which finally don't make the sustainable option the most attractive one. And so I think that really, back to your question about how should we be looking at sustainability today, it really needs to be seen as an integrated metric. Because if you see, let's say, the financial metrics of a business on one hand, and then you see sustainability metrics on the other hand, you can get very different views of a company. Whereas having integrated metrics for looking at a business holistically makes much more sense, and then is really integrated into every aspect of the company and not just an afterthought.
I think very often there is this discussion, right? When companies get valued by investors, right? Certain types of investors actually, have made choices to only be in businesses which, what you rightly said, that have holistically brought in sustainability, because there is an emotion attached to the financial capital that you're investing. And I think, as the world matures and as India matures, I think these decisions will drive companies to probably, also do a lot more, as you rightly pointed out. But I must say that, on the green building piece that you mentioned, I think India is already the second largest
Yes.
green building, market. Of course, we are a large country, and thanks to Godrej and your COE. So I know this is something that is close to your heart, to the group, and in a way, it is so important, because even though we talked of air conditioning and things like that, what you said, so when we think of Viksit Bharat, right, nobody talks of an air-conditioned home for all. I'm just saying, for example.
Yes.
Everyone says a home for all, an affordable home, right? But when you vision 2047, if that, given where we are going with global warming, so either you have a green building which is, making sure the air is moving, the air movement is keeping it cool, and there are many ways to do that, or you have air conditioning. I think these are much subtler aspects of that Viksit Bharat that need to be discussed and planned for, as we move on this journey. And what you're making it affordable and driving price performance, from a company perspective. Because Indian consumers are also, very strong when they look at value for money. I think all of these aspects that when they come together is good from the corporate side, right? And as business and industry. But to really achieve those long-term sustainability goals, it has to have multiple stakeholders. The government needs to play its role. I think civil society, each person who is, living in India through their consumption habits have to make that change. Is there a good example that you have seen, or do you have any ideas on what could this collaboration look like? Is there a metric? Is there something that the way we can evaluate that as a country?
So I would maybe talk about something which is very close to my heart, which is biodiversity. And how can we really look at biodiversity today, when when there are so many challenges as a country? Let's say, so today we are doing this very interesting study with it's a multi-stakeholder research on looking at mangroves and wetlands in two urban ecosystems. So one is Mumbai and one is Chennai, and where there is, of course, a lot of development pressure, huge population, a lot of ancillary issues that one has to look at. And how do we really look at green spaces and value them in the same way that we value other things? And unfortunately, to really value something, you have to put a rupee value on it. And so we are working with WWF, WRI, and with the Stanford Natural Capital Group, as well as Conservation International, to look at creating scenarios where you have, on the one hand, complete conservation, and on the other hand, you have complete development. And in our urban context, it's never, either or, and we can't have polarized discussions. So how do we have a more nuanced discussion on the whole idea of conservation of wetlands? And if we are, because one argument could be that, okay, today we have to put in transmission lines to be able to give power to the rest of the city. And on the other hand, there is conservation of a tract of mangrove or building of a highway. Now, of course, these are very important public utilities and important from a development perspective. But how are we really valuing the green spaces? And one can say we'll replant and transplant and create, a new green ecosystem. But what we fail to acknowledge is that if our green and blue infrastructure has been around for millennia, especially mangroves, the type of carbon that they sequester is 5 times more powerful than any terrestrial forest. And so once it's gone, it's gone. And not only that, but when you cut it down, there's more carbon which is actually emitted into the atmosphere because you're cutting away the roots. And the public cost of that today, if we don't put a value on the ecosystem services that, let's say, is provided against flood, for flood protection, soil erosion, for livelihood of fisher folk, and of course for clean air, I think those ecosystem services is something that we must value in financial terms to be able to actually have a more nuanced conversation with policymakers, because once it's gone, and there's nothing that we can really do to bring it back immediately. So I think those kind of sort of partnerships, as well as I think the idea of data and having a single frame of reference and looking at the same data sets, I think are quite crucial. And that's why Stanford has a tool for satellite imaging where they can really look at the degradation or augmentation of green cover. And today it's really a public health issue. If we look at Delhi, we look at Mumbai, even other cities, where today the price that we are paying is our health and our children's health. And somehow it still doesn't seem to be a wake-up call to us all in terms of our consumption patterns, in terms of also things that we value. And so I think maybe having more of a multilateral approach and having a singular frame of reference is quite critical today when we are looking at some of these issues which are complex, nuanced, layered, and probably have many decision makers in the mix. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it's something that we need to think about how we can do that more effectively, and not only think as, let's say, individual companies for an individual objective.
No, I think, that's the true collaboration, right? What you mentioned. And, being able to use that to be able to also predict and align prioritization for the country. Like, it is interesting you talked about the Stanford project when, I was working for NASA and we were looking at remote sensing. We were seeing how much corn is produced in America. There were a lot of details, and this is like 30 years ago, right? And one could really look at, and you could identify what are the other vegetables, fruits, what needs to be produced to make sure nutrition is holistic for the self-sufficient or for a country, right? I mean, this was at that time we were thinking. So today, with a strong data-driven process led by technology, one can actually identify that, and then today with quick commerce, etc., have it delivered, to you in real time. So there's so much that can happen if the guiding light is a data-centric kind of a mechanism. And you mentioned this was close to your heart. I'll take up a subject which is close to my heart, and that is individual social responsibility. We all talk of CSR, is that as an individual, and we've got a tool again, which where you tap into and we capture your own consumption and actually give you an ISR score. And depending on your score, on your daily habits and what you're doing and what you're doing for others, you're able to understand where you stand in a mix of, compared to others, and make it competitive for people to be able to, do better, or, and you also attract brands, which cater to that, right? And I think to government can recognize such people or maybe give a tax break, to those who are more sustainable. And similarly to enterprises, I think a lot can happen. And this is, I think, collaboration, right? We need to find data-led, issues. And I think every issue can then, be handled in a manner that with a very dedicated effort, because I think this is going to need incremental, dedicated effort over the years by multiple stakeholders. And I think that's what we're trying to do, right? Through the India 100 Foundation or CIIs to get this message out to many others and see how we can create a more, organized way of approaching some of these priorities. But beyond, CSR, right? And I was talking about ISR or volunteerism, and we have a National Volunteering Week coming up from 18th to 24 Jan. Empathy, purpose, accountability within organizations on the basis of the National Volunteering Week. I know Tata now does, the Tata Group has 2 volunteering weeks around GRT, Tata's birthday and others, where the companies within the Tata Group actually send their people out, to skilled volunteering and rate their organizations, right? So a lot can be done. Any thoughts, any suggestions on beyond the 2% CSR commitment? What can organizations do?
No, I think you touch upon a very important aspect, probably underrated in some senses, because one feels if you can write a check and sort of you've contributed to problem solving, but I think it's a very different feeling when you're actually down and putting your own hands to, let's say, clean up a solution, whether it's, I'd gone recently with my kids for a cleanup drive. And I think we have so much waste around us and so much, unfortunately, plastic waste and other waste. And how do we, of course, we can kind of speak from our ivory towers about how terrible it is, or we can actually go down and try to be part of the solution. And I think that it's very important for everybody. And as you said, goes back to the point about individual social responsibility, that each of us is both a contributor to the issue as well as can take responsibility for doing our part. And I think it really builds empathy. And I think today, empathy is a very important component of decision making, whether if one has to look at a business lens. And I think that idea of empathy, of connecting with something, with an issue or with a space or with a particular area, really helps to not only build engagement, but build a very committed and dedicated workforce. And I think that back to the idea of mangroves today, we have an initiative that we do with WWF called the Mangrove Mitras, which looks at basically bringing in communities to look at citizen science. How do we empower individuals who may not be scientists with the tools to look at, let's say, a mangrove health and the mangrove health card, and then they themselves come in and are taught how to make the health card, and then also understand the ecosystem itself while you're doing it, and engage with let's say the issue not from a sort of a fear and a doom and gloom perspective, but more from a inspiring and a positive perspective, which can really help also in the workplace, because you're not only sort of building relationships in that moment and building rapport, but you're also taking it back into the workplace. And I think that we all need to be doing much more volunteering than we are. And I think that it's really an excellent way to build engagement and to build commitment.
And one can volunteer with their time, with money, of course, and with their skills. And like you were talking earlier, one of the things that India at 75 and now India at 100 has done, it's been able to put an economic value, to the contribution from the skilled workforce within a corporate. There was a task force that was constituted, and it also contributes towards the 2% as a small percentage if, you have people in, and this is to all the company that are actually encouraging this, that you can claim a part of that towards your CSR as a part of the skill volunteering. This was included in there. Of course, the way one measures that value is not the CTC to the company, but more the perceived value by the institution or NGO or where you worked with. And there is a formula that was designed that has been largely accepted. So I think there is a lot that can be done here. And as we all know, who volunteer, that it helps you more than the person you are trying to help or the institution, because you learn so much. What you said, beyond empathy, just the fact that it probably secretes a lot of good hormones within the person to give you joy and happiness, which even money can't buy. So I think there are various ways, and I'm specifically talking more about this because we have the National Volunteering Week coming up, and over 300 organizations are already involved on a year-on-year basis between the 18th and 24th of Jan to be able to see how they can participate around various things. And for those who are interested, our CII Secretariat can help guide the organizations to kind of participate. One can participate in any shape and form, but we have larger themes and collaborative platforms which can be used to do that. And one thing, Nyrika, ultimately this India of 2047 is going to be about our young people. I mean, there is no two ways that, India's strength as well as our biggest challenge, lies in our demographic dividend, so to say. So when you think of young people in India, it's such an exciting fact that we have so many young people, and the true Bharat. If we look at, what's your message to young people, right? What's your message to this country, to be future ready? How do you think they should look at life? And maybe you want to also talk about women in particular. Totally up to you, but a message from your side to that generation.
Yes, absolutely. I think today we have a lot of fear about the unknown and things that that we don't really know. And I think sometimes that fear holds all of us back. And I think today is really a moment for us all to come together, uh, to dream, to be bold in our aspirations, but at the same time, to really to think responsibly, and how whether integrity today can really help us to be a differentiator, because I think trust really will be the currency of 2047, as increasingly we find today with the advent of technology, fake news, misinformation. I think the whole idea of trust, and how do we build trust back, and how do we as individuals um, speak with integrity, and also allow ourselves to be trusted. And I think that for me, that is one of the big areas where today I see, even with foreign partners coming to India, there's a lot of fear in terms of engaging with companies, a lot of, I was also speaking to a private equity investor in the US, who said India is actually the worst market to invest in, because companies overseas are afraid to come to India because they feel that their technology will be usurped, or they will be taken for a ride. And I said our experience with foreign partners has been very different, because from our perspective, it's been very difficult to get technology out of our partners, and maybe we haven't done it in the right way. But I think the idea of building a currency of trust is something very important, especially in the digital age. And if we can dream boldly and build trust and be responsible, I think that the country, both from an inclusivity perspective, because we have such a huge population, and also speaking as a woman today, I think the whole sort of glass ceiling, in a manner of speaking, when I also speak to women colleagues, is very much more prominent than amongst male colleagues. And I think how do we ourselves do more to be able to help other women to come up, to stay, not only sort of progress upwards, but really to stay in senior roles, is today a challenge. And although we've made a lot of progress in certain industries, there are other industries, primarily even in ours, where we need to do much, much more work. And I think that if we approach it with that lens, and with intention, then I think sky is the limit. And I believe sky is the limit for Viksit Bharat and what we can do if we all put our heads together.
No, wonderful. I think, this having courage and being bold and, making that India of 2047 happen, I think is in the hands of all the people that you mentioned. And, you talk of integrity. I think, Nyrika, it's such a big differentiator. The West has seen a neighbor of ours and how that has been misused in the past. So that has created distrust. What you said, we live in a world where it's hard to trust. And if we are able to, build that, and unfortunately, trust is not built overnight. So it's a wonderful long-term ambition to have, so that at 2047, not only are we the most developed, not only are we, globally recognized for what we do, but if we can be the most trusted nation in the world, what a wonderful vision. You have added a new flavor, because amongst all the different conversations, while we have talked of trust, but I think the way you put it today, and I think we'll take that back as a thing that not only that, you are the most trusted, because that stays beyond the economic ups and downs of countries. It stays beyond, even history of nations. Sometimes you'll always remember people or enterprises who you could have trust, and there's an inherent human quality there. I think that binds the world together, and truly, that could be probably the biggest gift beyond everything else. And I know we couldn't get into culture and many other things that we wanted to. We'll have to continue part two with you, but I think that's probably the best positioning India can have. Thank you so much for such a candid, wonderful conversation, and I'm
Thank you.
sure all the things we've talked about will be unlocked over the next 22 years as India goes to 2047. And whenever there's an area of mistrust, this conversation will go into social media and remind people of what India should be and what it can be. Thank you so much, Nyrika. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.